I just saw the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie for the first time, and being a huge fan of the series, ever since the release of the second game, I have a lot to say about it. This video contains huge spoilers for the new Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie. You have been warned. First, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Scott Cawthon and Blumhouse Studios for bringing one of my favorite video game franchises to life on the big screen. After all the time it's had to set in, it's still mind-blowing to me that we managed to get 2 official Five Nights at Freddy's movies in cinemas, with an inevitable third on the way. A few years ago, I would have never believed you if you told me that the Five Nights at Freddy's movie would actually come to fruition. If any of you guys have followed the series since the start, you would know that the first official Five Nights at Freddy's movie announcement came out when the third game launched. That was a full decade ago. Ever since, it's been in development hell at Warner Brothers, trying to perfect the script. Every couple months we would get confirmation that the development stalled or yet another script was trashed. It just couldn't pick itself up off the ground. I actually have a theory on why this is. Anyone who knows the lore of the games knows that back when Five Nights at Freddy's 3 came out, we only knew maybe 10 to 15% of the full lore, a very small fraction of what we know today. With that being said, there was so much blank space and uncertainty. Scott Cawthon himself, the creator of the games, didn't know which direction to take the lore. It's pretty obvious looking back on the timeline that he was making it up as he went along. It was never planned from the start. So, trying to develop a movie about this narrative was incredibly challenging. Most audiences wouldn't recognize the familiar faces that we now know because the lore was just a small fraction of what it is today. Ever since, there's been incredible world building in the span of 11 total games. We've seen the origins and motives of each character, and we've met many new faces that would seem out of place if the movie had released in 2015. Jump to October 2023, the release of the first movie. Fans were having a field day over the idea of finally seeing the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. We finally got to see our childhood brought to the big screen. The first reactions came out and fans adored it. Despite some very noticeable issues in the writing and the pacing of the film, along with some questionable motives, it was a very acceptable and memorable first movie in the trilogy. Keep in mind, a trilogy was confirmed at the time, thanks to the actor for the infamous William Afton, played by Matthew Lillard, coming out and saying he signed a 3-picture deal. This meant that 2 more films were in the works. It seemed obvious that the 3 films would follow the narrative of the first 3 games, until we got to the sequel. And just to be clear, I thoroughly enjoyed the first film. I thought Mike was a well-written character and a good protagonist to follow as his story led him and his younger sister Abby directly to Freddy's. This variation of Mike was Michael Schmidt, not to be confused with Michael Afton, who I initially thought was entirely sidelined in this universe because of the inclusion of Vanessa Afton. Wait, Vanessa is an Afton? That's definitely not right. You real fans out there are all thinking of the real daughter, Elizabeth Afton. Elizabeth Afton was William Afton's only daughter, who went on to possess the circus baby after William's deliberate plan to scoop her was a success. If any of you guys aren't familiar with scooping, I'm referencing the iconic moment from Sister Location when Michael Afton, the eldest son of William Afton, was quote-unquote scooped by the amalgamation of vengeful spirits from the original games, known as Ennard. Keep this in mind, as this will be very important later. Anyway, it was clear ever since Vanessa's introduction to the movie series that Scott Cawthon was taking the movies in a different narrative direction than the games. He was mixing elements of the books and all the games to make a coherent timeline that realistically just caused a lot of plot holes. Vanessa has no relations to the Afton family, and the only plausible reason that I can see to include her in the Afton family is to set up a protagonist-antagonist connection. So Vanessa has reason to show up at the pizzeria mid-movie. Honestly, in retrospect, they really screwed themselves in the ass by doing this. Now they have to constantly rework the original story to fit this new narrative. It's just confusing and overall pretty disappointing. I believe the whole Vanessa Afton scandal really butchered her character as a whole, and that's not even the tip of the iceberg. After making the Vanessa Afton retcon, Scott realized he couldn't go back and he had to continue pushing this altered narrative. So he did, by butchering more fan favorite characters. And yes, for all of you who have patiently awaited my real review, here we go. As soon as I sat down and watched the first 5-minute sequence of the movie, I was hooked. In my opinion, I think the first 5 minutes of the movie is the best by a mile. The set design for the original location was truly astonishing, and the scenes of Charlotte trying to save the little boy from Spring Bonnie really captivated me and kept me engaged for the rest of the movie. Seeing William's workshop from the perspective of a young girl was shockingly unnerving, and the scene of her being held in the puppet's arms is just chef's kiss. After this scene, everything went completely downhill. We're introduced to the idea of Abby going to fix the original animatronics because that's such a great idea after everything they've been through. Even after Mike's efforts to protect her, she insists on seeing her quote-unquote friends. This quickly leads her to meeting the toy animatronics, specifically Chica. Unknowing to Abby, all of the toys were under Charlotte's control, meaning Charlotte was commanding the toys to attack innocent families and children. A very odd motive considering the entire purpose of the puppet in the lore is to protect the children from becoming victims to William Afton. Honestly, I think they butchered the puppet the worst in this movie. They had her possessing people's bodies, which as far as I know, the puppet could never do that. Despite the whole possession thing, I really enjoyed the dynamic they made between Vanessa and Charlotte. The way Charlotte talks to Vanessa through the speakers was really cool, and the way Vanessa tries to ease her and prevent her madness was really intriguing. It was very clear that the rivalry between the two would be one of the best parts of the film overall. Despite the good moments we saw from the puppet, her character just didn't make sense, and she was very different from anything that we've seen in the games or novels. Now, I'm gonna jump into the next character that I really think they butchered. But I do have a theory that could explain everything. In the sequel, we were officially introduced to the live-action Michael Afton. Yes, it is confirmed, he does exist in this universe. However, he's more of just a creepy antagonist than anything else. This is especially weird considering Michael is known as the antagonistic brother to the crying child in the series. We haven't even seen the crying child at all in the first 2 movies. We don't even know if he exists in this universe. However, in the games, Michael would torment his younger brother until he eventually caused the bite of 83. The crying child got his frontal lobe completely chomped off by the original Fredbear thanks to Michael going too far with his torment. The aftermath of these events led Michael to change as a character and become a good guy who ultimately wanted to end his father's plans. In fact, Michael stayed in the fire that ultimately ended the suffrage of the missing children in Five Nights at Freddy's 6. Because he wanted to find peace after everything he has been through. So now, let's compare that to the movie counterpart. When we are introduced to the movie Michael, we quickly learn that he has been luring people to the old pizzeria to get them killed by the animatronics. A very weird and out of place move for Michael. Additionally, Michael appears at the end to, quote unquote, continue what his father started. Wait a minute. His entire plan was to finish what his father started. Why is he suddenly helping William? It's an entire 180 for his character. Now I'm going to get into my theory I mentioned earlier. Remember Ennard, the amalgamation of all the original animatronic souls? The 5th game in the series concluded with Ennard scooping Michael Afton's guts out and creating himself a flesh bodysuit to wear and stay hidden in the public. Eventually, as time continued, the dead corpse of Michael Afton began to decay. His skin started changing color, and his overall appearance was rotting off of itself. Eventually, the corpse was no longer diverting the public eye, and Ennard decided to abandon ship, disappearing for the foreseeable future. Now let's backtrack a little. In the second movie, Michael Afton appears to be completely normal and in good health. There's almost no red flags to the idea that he has already been scooped, aside from 2 key details. Number 1, the immediate 180 in character motives. Michael wanted to prevent everything his father started, but in the movie, he insists on continuing it. Very weird to have such a sudden change of heart, unless it's not actually Michael Afton. I believe Michael was scooped prior to the events of the movie, and I think I can prove it. You guys remember that very quick flashback sequence with Circus Baby? Circus Baby was the main antagonist of the sister location, the 5th game. She was the robot that William built to capture his daughter, Elizabeth. It seemed very out of place to see her randomly in William's workshop in a flashback sequence, until you notice one significant detail. The eyes are green, not blue. This means that Elizabeth is already possessing the robot. She was already captured, meaning most of the events of Sister Location would have happened by now, which according to the movie was 20 years in the past. It's not too far-fetched to say that Michael Afton very easily could have gone looking for the secrets of the Sister Location prior to the events of the movie, and even been scooped by Ennard. We can't definitively say when the events of Sister Location happened, but we can assume it was pretty recent, as Michael Afton looks like he is in pretty good health. I believe this would explain everything wrong with Michael's character up until this point. As for Vanessa, well, I honestly can't really piece together where they want to take this. My best guess is the ending of her being possessed by the puppet was meant to set up Vanny from Security Breach, but I feel like it would take away a lot of important screen time from the dynamic of Henry Emily and William Afton. The final movie needs to focus on those two in order to get it right. We need flashback sequences showing the connection between the two and how their motives intertwined. Henry Emily was severely underutilized in the sequel, and we definitely need to see more of him in the final movie. So, to conclude my review of the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie, I would honestly give it a 5 out of 10. To sum it up, I think just about every character was severely butchered from their canon counterparts. And I forgot to mention the Wizards had literally 5 minutes of screen time. I can't even make that up. They spent millions of dollars in the development for these incredible looking robot replicas. They really all just showed up for a quick aura farm and then returned to parts and service to disappear again. Oh,